Robin Lundberg Show back with you here. And I got to level with you guys because I've always told you how honest I'll be with this audience, especially for this show. But I am mentally, physically, and spiritually exhausted. It has been a rough couple of months or an interesting couple of months. And you know, with everything at work and what happened with SI, which was the spawn or the start of this show, of course, and we're still in the midst of that. In fact, things have gotten crazier. It feels like we are in the end game now, as Doctor Strange would say. So we got the news about that last week, and that's still ongoing. And meanwhile, my oldest son is in the hospital today. He's got to go back tomorrow. He's been dealing with something for a while now. He's okay, but it's gonna, it's a stressor. It's just tough when your baby, is going through something like that, and he's been a warrior through it all. I'm so proud of him. He's so brave. I had parent teacher conferences today, and when you hear the teachers tell you, these things about your kids, everybody's biased toward their own kids, but um, we got some good kids. Ronnie, my daughter, I always say she's the nicest person in the world, and her teacher said the same thing. And then Raj has been going through a lot. And then I'm gonna get to Big Ro and his new love for X-Men coming up in a bit, but I only share that because it helps me set the context for WrestleMania and what it means. Thank you, I appreciate that. Again, he's okay. He's just been soldiering through something for a minute here that it's just more than a 9-year-old kid should have to deal with. Let me just put it that way. But he, a while back, I had said to him, maybe we could go to WrestleMania in Philadelphia, because I had seen it was going to be in Philadelphia. And when it came around, he asked if we were going, and I didn't get the tickets on the initial drop because they were snatched up, they were snatched up. And so I waited, and I was waiting to pounce at the right moment. And I was saying to him, maybe we go one night, we can get better tickets. And he wrote 2 nights on little pieces of paper, on the back of little pieces of paper. He wrote it 2 nights, probably like 30 sheets of paper, right? And put it all through the house. He put it on my pillow, in the fridge, in the shower, everywhere you might go. He put 2 nights on a sign. And I was like, considering everything that he's gone through, got to come through for him. Got to come through for him. So when I got an inkling, a hint that The Rock would be there, I was like, okay, I need to snatch up these tickets now before they go and go and go. So we got them. Once I saw tickets that I thought made sense, and we're going next weekend. And there's been a lot going on, but that's been sort of a North Star, and obviously something that is a once in a lifetime experience, that most people don't ever get to do. I don't want to take that for granted, and the like. I've been to a lot of events because of my profession. I've done a lot of things that probably would spoil or could spoil others, right? Like I I've been to so many basketball games with a media credential for free, just there. I've got the hookup for tickets in the past, and I know it's not a luxury everybody gets to do. So, I'm not taking that for granted. Not taking that for granted. Definitely am excited. Definitely and super excited because he and I will share that, that's a moment that only the two of us can share, and we're going to be there. We're going to be there. And it's a special WrestleMania to go to. It feels that way. I mean, it would be a special WrestleMania no matter what WrestleMania I went to if I was going with him and we were going. Hell, it was fun when I went with my wife way back when at MetLife Stadium, and she's not even in to wrestling. But this one feels different. It feels special. And there's one guy, to be honest, who deserves the credit for that. And that's The Rock. It's The Rock. You can't front. You can't say otherwise at this point. This dude is just it. He's the greatest. He's the greatest of all time. And I say this as somebody who was kind of sick of The Rock, who wasn't into the catchphrases as much anymore and kind of felt he was coming off a little lame and all these other things, right? And when the Roman Rock thing happened, it did feel like, oh, the fans might actually turn on The Rock. But whatever that Cody crybaby energy created, that energy that was created, has led to something special. It's led to something special. And that is this final boss version of Rock. Entrance included. I mean, you cannot tell me this does not hit hard right here. Look at this. Now I'm buffering. Come on. I don't think that's ever happened to me on this here program before, where it's buffered. That's like, how many people have stared at a screen and seen that happen and got pissed off? Probably everyone, I would say. Let me see if I can just exit out of it and try it again. Hang on. Let me pull that back up. Let's see if it works now. Nope, still buffering, unfortunately. All right, let me go back to the original file and try again in a second here. I'm going to stop sharing that. You guys don't need to see that. Anyhow, The Rock, this version of him, this entrance that we've seen is just amazing. Everything about it is amazing. It rocks, I guess you could say. Here we go. Let's see. What? Yo! That is Thanos, right? That is Thanos. And WrestleMania is set to be Avengers Endgame. We're in for an Avengers Endgame level WrestleMania because you got The Rock beating the piss out of Cody Rhodes at the end of that show. And you don't usually see that happen too often. The Rock beating the, piss out of Cody Rhodes the way he did it reminded me of the Attitude Era, where that was a very throwback-esque kind of segment at the end of the show that they did. And the Rock himself has just harnessed that sort of energy and adapted it to the modern age through the social media promos and everything else he's done. And at this point, I think when you consider the argument was already The Rock against Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock was on the Mount Rushmore already. And I think this run, what we're seeing right now, has established The Rock as the greatest of all time. I don't think there's an argument anymore. I don't think you can say anyone is better than The Rock at this point in time. I don't think you can say it. I don't think there's even a conversation to be had about somebody being better than The Rock at this point in time. I mean, you've seen him go off and conquer Hollywood and become the biggest star that the wrestling business has ever seen outside of professional wrestling. And now he's back and running a program leading up to WrestleMania. And I don't know if everybody's seen the like teases and stuff that people saw. The truck. Did you guys see the truck last night? Let me see if I can show it to you real quick. Where people are wondering if this was a coincidence or not, and some are saying it just wasn't a coincidence. But boy, oh boy, because those are the other guys who you would consider, right, like as arguably the greatest of all time. I mean, they've been calling John Cena the GOAT. They've been calling him the GOAT. But he is that is a really well-framed shot. I will say that. If it's a coincidence, it's a really well-framed shot. So I think that night 2 of WrestleMania is going to be an absolute shit show in the best possible ways. In the best possible ways, where I don't know how many different musics we're going to see hit, but imagine that glass breaking. Or imagine and not to mention, could MJF show up? He's been removed from the AEW roster, right? And maybe he had a non-compete. Maybe he sat back and got healthy as that non-compete expired. That's a possibility. Cody's brother is a possibility. Obviously, Seth Rollins. Obviously, Jey Uso. It does feel like an on your left kind of moment. So I do think that what's up, Ernesto? I do think that The Rock and Roman will win on night 1 to set up that on night 2. But I think what we've seen from The Rock, I take back anything bad I said about him. Whatever happened with Black Adam, between the reception of Black Adam and the reception he got from the WWE universe and the Cody Crybabies, unlocked this final boss version of him. Because he is Thanos right now. He makes everybody else look like his son right now. And I love Roman. But Roman feels like a side character. Cody is the hero in this story. He's like Captain America trying to stand up to Thanos. Like, you're not getting through me, buddy. And all that. But there's only one final boss. Would you consider wrestling more popular than hockey and baseball? Does it count as a niche product? Wrestling is significantly more popular than hockey, I would say. I don't even think that's close. I would say wrestling's significantly more popular. Baseball would be interesting because baseball is still very popular. People don't realize it. Like, I know, there's always the talk about baseball dying, but you forget about how popular baseball is as a regional sport, right? Like, local sports talk radio talks about baseball all the time. And baseball has so much product out there that it supports regional networks, right? The Nets play on the Yankees network. The SNY, they cover the Jets on the Mets network. And that's all across the country. It works like that because there's so much product and so much advertising to be had through baseball. And then there's so many games for them to have people come out for. So I think the NBA and Major League Baseball are actually closer in popularity than most people would have you believe. And I say that as an NBA guy. Baseball ain't my thing. Everybody knows that. Who's followed my career knows that. But baseball is very popular. I think wrestling is significantly more popular than hockey. And wrestling is mainstream. I mean, you can't see these clips and what they're doing, the damage that they're doing online. I mean, the WWE's YouTube channel has 100 million subscribers. That's not niche. I mean, everything is niche in the sense of if you're covering something specific, you're kind of covering a niche. But I don't think you could say that wrestling is a niche. I mean, if it is, it's a big-ass niche. Big-ass niche. It's just like the people who like to clown on it still talk like they're superior to it for some reason, as if wrestling fans don't know the deal. I mean, part of the biggest appeal for wrestling fans is when they can see behind the curtain a little bit. When they can see behind the curtain a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's more popular than hockey for sure. Baseball's very popular though. Baseball's very popular. But that's what I had to say about that. And like I said, when this show started, I appreciate the kind words you guys are sending in. It's just been 2024 has been a bit of a doozy so far. Like I said, hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is coming out, and Raj has to go back to the hospital, the doctor tomorrow, but hopefully he's done with that for a little bit and we can get ready for WrestleMania, because he and I are going and he's excited. The trip is planned out. We're going Saturday and we're going to go to WrestleMania World. So if anybody's going to be at WrestleMania World, he and I will be there on Saturday. Then we'll be at WrestleMania itself, Saturday night, obviously, staying over. We're going to go to the zoo on Sunday. He loves zoos. He loves animals. We're going to go to the zoo on Sunday. And then, obviously, WrestleMania again on Sunday night before heading home on Monday. He's okay. I'm sorry. I don't want everybody to get worried. I'm just I'm honest on this platform. I don't want to get into the, I would actually, he's old enough where I would ask his permission before I share certain things, but he's okay. He's okay. I'm just setting the context of what WrestleMania means to us as a father and son and a family in a sense. And saying I'm proud of him, to be as brave as he's been, but he's okay. I get emotional, but everybody gets emotional around their kids and real life things. And like I said, it's just there's been a lot going on behind the scenes that I will share with you guys. At a certain point in time, once all is settled and done with. I mean, you could just do a Google search and you could see, forecast says shitstorm. Speaking of forecasts, there's a line in that X-Men 97, and it says, Storm, give him the forecast. And Cyclops shows up, I'm sorry, Cyclops says that, and then Storm shows up, and it's a really cool moment in the show. And, I was waiting to watch that with my kids. I'd seen it, myself, but then I wanted to watch it with them and share the experience because Raj and Ronnie had watched the original X-Men series with me way back when. So they knew the context. But Big Ro, my youngest, he actually turns 3 on WrestleMania weekend. Here's a picture of him from his Easter photos. That's Big Ro. He's a big kid. He's a 2-year-old still, right there. He got really excited to watch it too because he's been super into like Ninja Turtles and Transformers and Marvel as of late, but he didn't really know who the X-Men were outside of this like Wolverine toys we have, and he has like a getup where he'd put the claws on. In fact, he likes to mix and match. He would have like part Black Panther, part Wolverine, whatever. But he sat there and he watched it with his brother and sister. And he was like, this is awesome. And the next day he said, Daddy, can we watch X-Men again? I want to watch X-Men again. And I was like, sure, watch X-Men again. And I said, which episode do you want to watch? The first one or the second one? And he points to the one he wants to watch. I put it on. I was doing other stuff at this time. I leave the room. When I come back, I'm looking at it and I'm like, wait, is that Jubilee in the mall from the original X-Men series? And sure enough, it was. Sure enough, Big Ro had watched through the new episodes and the old episodes came on, which is why I found this statistic or this piece of information so interesting. It says the original X-Men 1992 animated series saw a 522% increase in viewership across its 5 seasons since the X-Men 97 trailer dropped on February 15th. And that makes sense because I've seen the real-time example of that. I've seen Big Ro sitting there watching X-Men and watching the old X-Men. And that's why I do have faith that X-Men's going to change the game for Marvel and rejuvenate Marvel. I do believe that because that is their best property. I mean, Spider-Man 2, you have to give Spider-Man credit. Spider-Man, I think, is objectively the best superhero. But I think that X-Men has the best characters. I think X-Men has the best stories. So I'm super into this X-Men 97 show. I think they pulled it off flawlessly. I think you can see the reception to it and how it's being met. And I think, it's only up from here for that property because that's what they needed to get back. It's what they needed to get back. So that was pretty exciting. What else is going on out there in the world? Before I'll go back to the Kendrick and Drake thing in a bit, but I don't know if you guys saw this. I don't know what to make, this Diddy story, if you will. I hate to. I think he's in big trouble. I think once the feds come knocking in that way, then it's an issue. It's an issue, and here's my thing. This has been out there. 50 Cent posted this milk carton picture of Jay-Z around the Puffy news, saying where is he? Anybody seen Jay? LOL. Puff said he ain't answering his phone. Now, I don't know if that's a reference to the fact that Hove doesn't want to be associated with Diddy in the midst of this when he used to talk to him, or if it's 50 implying something else, that Jay-Z has some involvement in whatever Diddy was up to. Let me just say, I've seen a lot of people on timelines saying like Jay-Z and Beyonce are next. And that is weirdo behavior. It is really weirdo behavior because it shows that you aren't concerned about the actions or the criminality or any possible victims. You're only concerned about your silly little agenda. Now, with that said, as much as everybody knows Hove is my GOAT. I got the 444 cover right there. It's my favorite album. Everybody knows that. So I'm biased in that sense. But if he or anyone else is caught doing something insidious, he or anyone else should suffer the consequences for said action. But knowing someone is not enough to establish that level of guilt for these level of accusations. We know that Jay-Z and Puffy have had a relationship. Puff, let's go half on a boat. Says it on the song. Diddy was a driving force behind some of the production on American Gangster. Old songs he had laying in the vault that he brought forward. And then, of course, Jay did the albums with R. Kelly back in the day. Probably something he would undo if he could now. But you got to remember, R. Kelly was the biggest R&B artist in the game at the time. A lot of people did songs with R. Kelly. And a lot of people have worked with Diddy. Diddy has been around since the 90s. Many people have been associated with Diddy. Just like many people were probably in the same room with Jeffrey Epstein at some point. Or many people were in the same room as Harvey Weinstein at some point. Or being in a photo with somebody or being around somebody doesn't necessarily implicate you in whatever they did. Now, I still don't know exact. We've seen enough around Diddy to, I think, infer that there was some weird stuff going on. But 50's been trolling Jay-Z forever. And that's part of who 50 is. He's an instigator. He's a shit stirrer. I get it. And they have, a little back and forth. I'm about $1. What the fuck is 50 Cent? Way back, or um, what does he say? Rap Ken Griffey, watch how, or Mike Jordan to rap, watch how quickly I drop 50. There's another Griffey line somewhere. Yeah, Mike Jordan to rap, watch how quickly I drop 50. And those were shots at 50 Cent, obviously. So those two guys have had a little bit of a back and forth over the years. So 50 has always taken shots at Jay. I don't think it's cool to insinuate, unless you actually have knowledge, to insinuate some sort of connection, like I said, with serious things. Just like the agenda. It's, it kind of reminds me of like some of the AEW fans online who are trying to catch everybody up in Vince's thing. And it's like they're rooting for that to be the case rather than rooting for fewer victims, rooting for fewer people to be involved. Like, that's what I would root for. Fewer people to be involved, fewer victims. But nonetheless, hence is the internet. And what does Jay-Z say? Hell, back on the blueprint. You want a front page article? Mention Jay-Z's name, right? Want a front page article? You mention Jay-Z's name. And that's what we've seen over the years from 50 and Jay. Gets a little contentious. And we'll see, but I do think it's very weirdo behavior to hope people are caught up in something when you don't have any actual knowledge. Because there is, other than Jay-Z knowing Diddy, a lot of people have known him. Even if you recorded with him or did other things like that, doesn't mean you were directly involved in whatever he was directly involved in. And the internet just likes to jump to those conclusions. Like and subscribe to the channel if you like what you see, like what you hear, and of course comment. Also share if you can. If you're watching this later and you want to comment after the fact, I do get back to the comments after the fact as well. Plenty to say. Side note, Jay-Z collab with Linkin Park was crazy for us rocker fans. Yeah, I mean, like, I think a lot of fans were actually introduced to Jay-Z during that era, during that point in time, where the Black Album, this is the Black Album, that when that happened, when the collab with Linkin Park happened, and Numb Encore still goes hard as hell. That's a classic. And he played it, I think the last show I went to, I think it was the 444 tour. He played Numb Encore as the encore. And this was shortly after Chester from Linkin Park had died. So obviously it was a sad thing, but he paid respect to him playing that song. But I think that song is better than the original encore, if I'm being real with you. But I don't know if people, like Eminem used to get played on rock stations. Why? Because he's a white boy. I mean, that's the long and short of it, right? He got played on rock stations because he's a white boy. And there was a whole group of fans that identified with Eminem because of that. Like, there was a relatability, right? And Eminem's nice, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying otherwise. But I think Eminem would tell you it probably was harder for him to break in the door because he was white. And then once he did break in the door, it was easier to explode because he was white. White Boy Blossom, after Dre endorsed him, is flowing Renegade, fucking awesome. So he used to get played on rock stations. Wu-Tang always had a big following amongst the rocker type crowd. Probably why they went on tour with Rage Against the Machine. I remember kids when I grew up in a town where, it was diverse in the sense there was a lot of, probably 35% black, I would say, roughly. And the rest white, but there was no in between. I didn't meet a lot of people from other backgrounds and other cultures till I got to college and beyond. But the white boys back then would talk about Wu-Tang Clan. So it was Eminem and it was Wu-Tang. And then Hove really burst on that scene with the Black Album. And I remember when they started playing 99 Problems on WHFS, which was the rock station in DC. By the way, thoughts go out to anybody affected by the bridge collapse in Baltimore. That was a crazy scene to see. But yeah, they played 99 Problems on WHFS, which was the rock station out there. And then I think I saw him at an HF Festival, if I recall correctly, which was their festival. Wyclef had done it as well. But Wyclef was always a little bit of a different sort of artist. Especially, this was around the time of the Carnival, or what was his second album called? Eclectic. But the HF Festival, they 99 Problems. And then everybody remixed the Black Album. DJ Danger Mouse did the blend with the Beatles for the White Album. And then Jay's did his own mix with Linkin Park, which was called Collision Course. And that probably did open him up to another fan base. I think he probably hit one other level with Blueprint 3 and Empire State of Mind, as big as that record was, and Run This Town and all that. But yeah, I think that probably did introduce him to a new audience. And you got to think about the level of hits that were on that album. I mean, there were iconic songs on the Black Album. What more can I say? It's just a great joint near the front of it. But as far as just like big joints, 99 Problems is on there. Massive. PSA is on there. Allow me to reintroduce myself. Massive. Dirt Off Your Shoulder is on there. Massive. Encore is on there. Massive. Not to mention Lucifer, Allure. The Black Album is one of them ones. When you go through, like, historically, like, most iconic songs. Doug Developer, was Eminem one of the first rappers to also put humor in his lyrics? I'm the worst thing since Elvis Presley to do black music so self-selfishly and use it to get myself wealthy. Hey, no, I don't think so. He did do it very well. And he had that maniacal character and delivery in Slim Shady. But Slick Rick used humor in his rhymes. Biz Markie used humor in his rhymes. Even like Q-Tip left my wallet in El Segundo. There's a level of humor to that song. So I wouldn't give Eminem credit for introducing humor to hip hop. I would say he maybe took it to another level in that, like, as far as being like a deviant and a maniacal individual. Yeah, I mean, that Slim Shady character was very funny. He's got some very funny rhymes, but he's not the only one, either before or since, to do that. Never listened to Rihanna till Run This Town. Still fire today to build up. I saw the first ever live performance of that song. It was at a festival called All Points West. As far as I think it was called that, but it was Liberty Park, Jersey. Anyhow, the Beastie Boys were supposed to headline it. Oh, by the way, humor and rhymes. There you go, the Beastie Boys. That's another example. Run DMC, I'm sure, had some, punchlines back in the day too. But the Beastie Boys were supposed to headline, and unfortunately, that's when MCA got cancer, and they couldn't perform. And RIP MCA. Instead, Jay-Z took the spot, and it had rained all day. It was like pouring rain. And we were worried it wasn't going to happen. Myself, my wife, was she my wife then? No. My buddy Mike Brownshire from ESPN Radio, if he's listening to this, I was getting him into Jay-Z at the time. This is the Blueprint 3 era. So we trudged through. It turns out the show goes on. And Jay opened with a full-on cover of No Sleep Till Brooklyn. So he had all them Beastie Boys fans like in the palm of his hand after that. And then he went into Run This Town and Death of Auto Tune at the time. But those were the, that was right before the album actually, I think, came out, maybe, or right after, around that time. Because he had another show that we went to a week or so later, which was a 9/11 fundraising show. And Pharrell was there, Rihanna was there, Kanye was there, Beyonce was there. John Mayer was there and did like a medley on the guitar. That was a very interesting show. Ernesto points to the Fat Boys as another group that used humor in their rhymes. They can only go far as Eminem. Humor in songs, it's hilarious. Good job, Robin, to bring back some of the OGs. Yeah, I mean, I left my wallet at El Segundo. I gotta get it. I got to get it. Tribe Called Quest, if you never heard it. And by the way, for some of you, I'm not mocking you in this sense, because we all experience things and get to things at different times. So it's worth going back and checking it out. Explain this, honestly asking. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame consists of all music, not just rock. Yeah, it's evolved over time. I think it would be very limiting to call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and try to only force rock acts in there, because if we're being real about it, rock has not been a very popular form of music for a very long time. Rock's last heyday was the 90s. When the lights out, ever changing. Like that was it. That grunge period, they had it. Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots. And it sort of coincided with like Red Hot Chili Peppers when they were at their peak. But who's the last great rock band? Foo Fighters? There hasn't really been rock bands to that extent since, right? Because you think of rock, as this rebel sort of music. And it was at one point in time. I mean, even Elvis was portrayed, Elvis ripped off Chuck Berry, and all that was like this rebellious, like the devil music. And then like rock and roll came out and In Your Face, and Metallica and stuff like that. And then hip hop became that. And I disagree with this, Ernesto. People still reference disco. They still try to do. Beyonce did the equivalent of disco records on Renaissance, right? Or modern day disco records. Rock and roll, there'll be another great rock band. It'll happen. And people will always love the rock music that they love. I just think it would be limiting to call the, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or limit it to only rock and roll artists. Well, I mean, rock and roll implies music is what I would say to that. Like, it doesn't have to be so literal, I guess, as I would say. It is becoming the Music Hall of Fame. It has evolved over time. And let's be honest, if you're just talking rock and roll, some of these artists deserve to be there. From their, like, Jay-Z has rock and roll songs. PSA is a rock and roll fucking song. You Don't Know is a rock and roll song. 99 Problems is a rock and roll song. You ever hear him do those in concert? Back to back to back? Those are riffs. Those are rock joints. They rock the place like that. Till I Collapse, I'm spilling these raps long as you feeling them. That's a rock song. You gotta lose yourself in the music the moment. That's a rock song. So, even if it was just rock and roll, aren't those the two last big entries? They belong there. Not to mention, that's a segue. Kendrick going number 1. Future Kendrick Metro Boomin with Like That. I talked about this on the show yesterday. But again, like Kendrick, Humble is a rock song. That's a rock song. DNA, rock song. And Like That rocks. It rocks. That joint slaps. Drake's going to have to hear it everywhere he goes. He's going to have to hear it everywhere he goes. So, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how he responds to it when we get that. It looks like Kanye just posted a snippet of or a screenshot of No More Parties in LA from the Life of Pablo album, which I think, Kendrick is on there, right? So it's a little subtle shot at Drake there from Ye. But that Like Jack joint goes hard. I know I was fighting with somebody here in the comments yesterday, one of these Drake stands. I'm sorry, that joint just slaps. You got to take the L. There's no way around it. There's no getting around it. That might be the song of the summer. That Metro's beat on that is so tough. You can't really ignore it. But anyhow, that's what I had on the rundown. The agenda for today's show, guys. I did want to share that thing off the top. It was based on what's going on with the Rock now. I mean, I guess it was much more personal than what just talking about the Rock would be. But it did help set me up and segue me into WrestleMania. And to be honest with you, when I sat down in this chair, I did not know I was going to talk about that. I did not know that was going to lead the show. Or I knew I was going to lead with I did the poll and put it out there. I knew I was going to lead with the wrestling, but I didn't know I was going to even share anything about Raj. But it's just been on my mind today. And there's been a lot. Like that's why I do say, please like, subscribe, share, comment, all that. You guys help me out. You've been therapy for me during this process. No matter how this shakes out, the silver lining is I started this channel. I will keep this channel going as it evolves over time. See what it becomes, keeping the live streams going. I will always keep the live streams going. I might dial back the number at some point or tailor them more around events. But in this meantime, like it's given me a sense of purpose when we've been in the end game. I said WrestleMania end game. We've been in the employment end game for a minute here. In some people are going to write books and do documentaries about what we've gone through and are still going through at this moment. Like it's like that to go off the Kendrick lyric. So it's meant a lot to me that you guys have been here for me. And this has been an outlet for me. So I've been very personal on this platform. I when I shared that, when I talked about the mental health and the alcohol on that first show, or not the first show, but one of the first shows, that's the first time I'd ever said that to an audience. There's been a lot of these things on this show, some behind the scenes stuff I've shared with you guys that I've never shared anywhere else. Because you guys are my biggest fans, right? You're the ones who, when I started this, are still here in the comments section. So there's a level of authenticity I feel like I owe you. I loved X-Men 97, but don't Cyclops lasers from his eyes kill his enemy? In the first episode, they just wound them. Well, I mean, I think he can dial up or down the intensity, right? He has some level of control about that. And with that, he has some level of control to that. So it's not just, one size fits all. That's what the visor helps for. The visor was gone. It's just all bets are off. That's why he has the visor. I mean, the whole premise of the X-Men, other than them being outsiders who are excluded and discriminated against, but the premise of the school is that Charles Xavier takes them in to help them hone their powers. and better use their powers and learn how to harness their powers and abilities. So that's a a function of the X-Men. That's what they've done. One of the things they've been built around and based around. Charles, to me, my X-Men. So it's one of the, there's a lot of layers to the X-Men, and everything that they've been and have been and will be. Because I think you're about to see this huge X-Men renaissance right now. Because they are, they are amazing characters with amazing stories. And Marvel had to go without them for the longest time. And now they got them back. It's like when they got Spider-Man back. You remember they started without Spider-Man. And Spider-Man wasn't introduced until Civil War, right? That was his first appearance. And quickly, everybody got back on the Spider-Man bandwagon. By the way, I don't know if you guys could see, but I did finally, I've been talking about it forever. I got something up on this wall. It is the tweet. Maybe I could take it closer. It is the tweet from Kevin Durant to me. It says, keep dreaming. Wow, that's a bad angle. It says, keep dreaming, Robin. And then my response, and I say, not sure why you want what you wanted to address, why you asked what I wanted to address then, but I'll print out this Twitter interaction and hang it on my wall. So if Katie's out there watching, I fulfilled my promise. Our Twitter interaction is now on my wall. It is there taking up this blank space. I got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name. That's how the song goes. Anyhow, appreciate you guys. As always, any other comments you want to get in, hit them up. Hit me up real quick before I get out of here for today. Like I said, it's been a long day, long week already, long couple of months. WrestleMania around the corner. And appreciate you all. As I've said, this doesn't exist without you. I wouldn't, and I oftentimes feel better after I do this, to be real, even when I don't feel like doing it, because there's been some days I didn't feel like doing it and I persevered and pushed through. There's been other days when I've been excited to do it. I almost always am glad I did it after the fact. And then any changes, any tweaks, all that. The best way I know to announce it is I'll post it on X and on my Facebook as well. But I know YouTube sends out the notifications whenever anything is scheduled and whatnot. So that'll do it for this here program tonight. I should be back tomorrow. Same Robin channel.